Yo, 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 what's up? So this is a video on, it's going to be on some drum and bass things, and this was going to apply to other things as well, but you know, there's this concept called, well, I don't know what people would call it. So I'd like to call it like a layer of hype. I know Il Gates likes to call it the noise wash. So we're gonna do a combination of synthesized percussion and sampled percussion. So there are libraries like Addictive Drummer, which are very useful for this kind of thing because it's round robin multi-sampling. So that's what I would recommend for a really good additional layer if you're looking for an additional layer. But let's assume that people don't have that at first. I'm just gonna make a quick bass line first so that I can kind of like fit the drums over that. So I'm just gonna use a bass here. Oops. Alright, so got a little, maybe based on the downbeat too, actually. Hold on. So I'm just gonna get this bass out of the way a bit more with this EQ and EQ it a bit differently. I'm gonna simplify this beat a little bit more. So I'm gonna now just shrink everything a little bit more to make more room. I'm getting ready to put these hats in, but I'm just trying to make some space first and get everything sitting so that we can have the right context for our hats. So gonna go in here and just shorten up this kick drum. Kind of a splashy layer. Cone sound snares. A lot of the tails are nice, splashy tails. Also, what's his name? Matt Zoe. He has a drum pack out. So let me search Matt snare. Check out some of these tails. I don't know why I have like 3 of every one of these. What is going on? That's a nice rim shot. So I gave that some attack so that I'm just kind of getting off the transient, and then I'm just using this kind of like almost as like a reverb. Alright, so one thing I use a lot to add more dynamics to drum programming is automating the drums to change over time using these envelopes. So if we automate this release here on this Matt Zoe snare tail reverb room tail thing, and any DAW you can do this in, just automating the release on like a sampler. So I want it to be like boom, open, and then closed. So the first one's open, and then I'll automate the release down on this next one. See how, like, now there's a whole new journey going on in this section of bar. So right here, I'm going to put a response sound because we have a call sound. So I'm going to put a response sound. And I'm going to have that sound be up in the highs more. So you can see that the tail's kind of getting in the way. So I'm going to use gain automation. So automating the volume on like a utility plugin or on the volume of any plugin, just to get that out of the way. Next thing is I need to fix the sidechain because this sidechain is meant for halftime, but in drum and bass it's much faster, so shorter drums, shorter sidechain. So now I'm going to shorten and fine-tune the sidechain pumping coming from the kick and the snare. The next thing is I have my sidechain coming in early, but that's also, and I have another video on this, so don't worry about having to understand this, but basically these little delays are allowing me to make my sidechain pumping come in before every drum. I'm just going to set that to like 6 or 5 milliseconds on both of those main groups. I'm going to go super simple with this pattern, actually. Alright, so first thing, this bass is going to fight with the hats, right? So let's kind of put some of these hats in and see how it sounds. So I'm gonna use let's synthesize a hat, right? So let's go into this phase plant here, and I'm just gonna do an initial preset here, so blank, and let's get out a noise oscillator, and then we're gonna do a filter, and let's do a bandpass. And then let's sweep that up and then bring the Q down. And then to beef that back up a bit, let's get a distortion out. And let's just give that a little bit of some of that. So now I'm just going to do a single note of white noise. Okay, and we're going to kind of sculpt away at this to create our hat. So C. I'm not sure why. Sometimes if the MIDI note is like hold on. I don't know why this isn't actually playing. Is it turned down? Oh, it's muted. Okay. So you can hear it's already pumping, and that's because I have my drums separated into kick and snare, and then everything else in a side-chained drums group. And that's, you know, being bussed separately. And so I can put a compressor on that group and sidechain it to the kick and snare and get that all those hats to get out of the way of my transients. So now we're going to use some LFOs to sculpt this noise. So I'm going to first just start out with a quarter note. And let's start out with a nice quarter note, right? And I'm going to give this a bit of a shape like this. So like a nice shark fin with a little space on each side. And let's just map that. First, let's just map it to the cutoff of this bandpass a little bit. All right, so that's kind of giving it a little bit of shakeriness, right? Making it a little more like a shaker sound. And so let's duplicate this. I'm going to use Control and then click on the header here on the left side of this LFO, and it'll duplicate that. And then I can start to use this as a different shape. So let's make it a little bit more hat shaped like this. And let's just modulate that distortion, the drive on this distortion. So I'll modulate the drive a lot and then turn this knob down so that we're going to be kind of modulating the volume all the way now. All right, so that's sounding pretty good. I'm going to try now a plate reverb on this. So this will give it a little bit of stereo. And I'm basically turning this reverb as small as I can. Now I'm going to boost that high gain up. Modulating that reverb gives it a little bit more splashiness and airiness. So I'll now just blend that in. So again, now we're going to need context, right? So I'm going to start duplicating time, and let's get an actual 16 bar amount so that we have context, because it's going to be hard to explain that without context. So I'll just loop this up. All right, so after the first 8 bars here, so on the second 8 bars, I'm gonna go in and just duplicate this hat patch we have here, and I'm gonna get, and you could like, in place of using this noise, you could use samples or whatever, and I'll probably layer in some samples once we get the basic patterns down. So now, instead of layering these hats together, I'm just gonna switch to this new patch. And let's change it. So let's go for more of a quarter note. So I want this to be a little bit wonky, so instead of switching the synced time to, or I'm sorry, not quarter, eighth. I want to do an eighth note pattern. So instead of doing that in the sync mode on the LFOs, I'm just gonna draw it in here so that I can get a little bit more human with it. So if we want this to be a little bit more percussive, I can take this LFO and map it to another gain knob here. So see, these might be nice layered together, but they're overlapping too much. So what I'll do is just take an EQ and high pass it, and then modulate that high pass to go up during this point when we increase the intensity by doubling the speed of the hats here. But we'll still have that washy hat sitting on top of this other hat. And then maybe we could even low pass and high pass this hat to get it out of the way a bit. Alright, so the next thing, now that we have this like one level and then it steps up to another level, I want to add in a little bit of details. So let's go in and I'm going to get a shaker. So that could work. So I'm gonna try to just, I'm gonna put this over here first and just get it to be what I want it to be. So one sec, I'm gonna loop this up. Alright, so that's the kind of shaker I'm looking for. A chicka chick. A chicka chicka. So I'll loop this up again. Maybe right in here between the basses. Sorry, I'm trying to listen in my head to like where I want this to go, but it's a little tricky. I feel like it could go there. But see how it's like too much? It's too much because it's so stereo. So I'm just gonna make it mono and turn it down. So now let's add more escalation. So I'm going to do that with more automation of first just the volume. So I'm going to get a utility plugin out and just automate the volume of this more. Alright, so I'm gonna add in some white noise now on the sub, and this is gonna make the whole mix sound louder and the sub's gonna sound louder. So let me go into this sub preset here and just show you quickly how to do this. You want to make another group by just doing a noise, and then do a high pass filter before the output here. This is the volume out, you know, this is where the sound goes through and gets shaped. So now we're going to use the amplitude with this little green plus of our sub to modulate the level, or this volume right here. It's called level. And let's do it about 50%. So you can see with no amplitude modulation, it just sounds like two sounds. As soon as I amplitude modulate, now it sounds like the sound is so loud that it's vibrating the hairs on the inside of your head or in your ears, and it's like vibrating. The club's starting to fall apart, right? So we're gonna want to like automate this. So I'm gonna take the gain and map it to a macro. That way it's off until I turn this noise up. I'll label it noise. And now watch, we can automate this and get a lot more movement out of our bass. Convolution reverb thing. Let's try putting it before all this processing though. Alright, so I'm just going to record automate that. Alright, so that should be enough to just duplicate. And then we can add in some more section. I'm just trying to get this bass to sound not so bad. Alright, so one thing that really helps with this whole noise wash thing is to then cut to being dry. First, let's have this noise on the sub get increasingly loud over this whole 16-bar section. And then right here, let's cut it. Let's cut the noise out. Alright, and I'm also going to go ahead and elongate this pattern to add more emphasis. So I'm going to get rid of the second, or I'm going to replace the second. I'm going to put the second response at the end here, delete this third response, and put this right here. So let's see. Alright, so I don't want to keep doing this riff. I want to make a new riff. So I'm going to just do a note. Actually, maybe this call could be cool between this and that. So check it out. We could use this as a new kind of noise wash layer if we wanted. I'll put that at the end too, like that, and then let's do this repeating. And then look, we can use a reverb like maybe the shimmer reverb and automate it to turn into some sort of noise wash that we can use in place of a hat. Alright, so I want I want this reverb to like get louder here and then start doing this thing where it's like check it out. We could also freeze this. I wasn't going to say that, but yes. Anytime you do weird things with reverbs like that, you're going to want to freeze it so that it doesn't mess up your life. Okay. Let's try putting like some detail on the snare. So I'm gonna get a reverb or a delay out and just put it on the snare. And Alright, so with this kind of attempt to make a noise wash out of the reverb here, I'm going to put on a new channel and EQ it. So it's got a lot of weird side information, so I'm going to try band passing the side. So one thing I can do here with effects is to just break it out onto another channel, right? So I can do is take the audio from whatever channel my kick and snare's on, and then set it to input monitor and just find the right menu. So I like to hit play and just look. See, that's cool. I accidentally took just the higher weird layer of the snare, not the main transient, and then sent that through the delay, and then I made the delay fully wet. And so now this is just a delay, but it's on its own channel, so I don't have to worry about it getting in the way. And I could even take this and put it down in the sidechain group now so that it gets sidechained. Alright, so this would be a good chance to synthesize a pre-transient. Okay, so I'm going to do... I'm going to use this hat and just change it into a pre-transient, or a little suction that sucks into the drums. So for that, I'm not going to want to use this LFO. And I'm not going to want to use this either. But I am going to want to use a macro to map it to the gain, the final gain here. Or the final gain knob. And then let's also map this to the cutoff of the frequency, or the cutoff of the filter here. Maybe even more. So that's a little noise sweep. It's got a little juiciness to it. I want it to end like around 3K. Alright, so that's our little wee, our little sweepy sweep. And now let's go in and just automate this. So on every 2 and 4, I want it to just suck into that little hit. And then go back away. And maybe a little bit of space before, because I think our snare's coming in early. So something like that. And then depending on this curve, we can get a whole bunch of different feels, a whole bunch of different pumping actions. So let's just keep doing that. And we want to do it into the kick as well. So let's just continue this first. Okay, so that should be sucking in every snare now. Alright, so I want it to be more like that. So see how it's kind of going like whoosh into it? If we reverse the direction of this filter frequency sweep, it'll be more like a So you can see, you can actually get so much more layers in if you're really careful about cutting and carving away your layers. So one thing I could do right here is just automate a bit of an EQ shelf on this shaker to even take away from it. See, I can turn it up now that I've taken away from it. Alright, so I could automate this gain to get a little bit more difference in this shaker. So there's a few things we could do, like maybe this. pre-transient, we can suck into the kick too. So there's a kick here that we can suck into with this shoop shoop. So this has a little too much lows in it, so I'm going to give it more of an EQ. Alright, let's see how this kind of more minimal section stands up to our more noisy section. Alright, and then right here, let's try bringing in our noise again. So we can modulate this hat too. Alright, so I feel like for effects, you know, sometimes people do a little like white noise sweeps. So let's try it like adding that in just to see, even though we're already doing so much white noise. Trust me, white noise just makes for a good bed that you can layer other actual physical sounds on top of. It just really helps to keep the energy going in things like drum and bass. So we have a phase plant here. Okay, so let's do just a noise, and then let's do a nonlinear filter on the bandpass mode. Or actually, yeah, let's do another filter, because the other filter's a little bit more clean and surgical. So we can use this filter too and increase the slope here, and then use macro to modulate both the frequency knobs so that we can dial in the exact sweep we want. Right, and then so leading up into this section, so I'm just going to put a long MIDI note, and this is going to be our noise, and then we can automate it with this utility right here to go get out of the way if we want it. Alright, and then, you know, I like to put like a reverb on this. So let's go, so let's just do room, Valhalla room. And then the key is to automate the volume of this. Okay, so we're gonna sweep into that first snare, and then we're gonna give it a little bit of artificial sidechain there, and then let's cut it early. It's a little bit left there, you can hear. And then up into this little fill turnaround thing, let's bring it back in. Let's bring it back in and sweep it accordingly. So you can get a lot of like extra movement that way. Let's do it again. So since this gets a little bit more minimal, let's let this noise really ride out more. Let's try that. So that it could be cool to have it like get real quiet there for a sec. And then maybe let's go back to this first style we had again. Okay, so let's see how it sounds now if we layer some real high quality hats. If you're into D&B and you don't have something like Addictive Drummer, you might be slacking a little bit. I would definitely recommend paying attention to when they do sales, because I got Addictive Drummer on sale. That was like my New Year's purchase. And it really is worth it. I just have the funk and the jazz kit. There's all kinds of sick kits, and it just sounds really good. All right, so right off the bat, I'm going to start with like a little 8-note pattern. Alright, so when I'm dialing in these hats, I like to turn down the room reverb on them, because we have room reverb on like our white noise and stuff. So let's just listen to this real quick. First of all, it's panned, so I'm going to not pan it. Let's take down the room level. overheads. Let's take all the overheads and the reverbs off. Keep this insert here, and I'm gonna start turning the overhead up. I'm also gonna start to take that transient off a little more. So it sounds good to kind of pitch the overheads down a little bit. Let's hear how this sounds now. Alright, so for this, I think a little upper melody could be good, because it loses a little tension right here. Minimal here. Let's change the hat. Movement in these hats with gain again. All right, so you can see, like, you can really fit a lot of layers of hats if you do a lot of gain automation. If you don't do the gain automation, you're not going to be able to fit 6 or 7 layers of cymbals and hats and stuff. So it's really all about sidechaining it out of the way of the kick snare, and also just all this gain automation. So let's take a look at the gain automation again, and just see how much I'm getting these hats to move. You know, it's subtle, but each section has its own little automation pumping, and I'm just getting that velocity. But it's not actually velocity. It's not it's post velocity, if that makes sense. It's almost more of like a spatialization effect that's happening from that. It's just giving it a lot of movement and pump, and not trying to draw attention to itself. You know, it's about these bases. And if you notice, I'm taking turns. I'm calling and responding. Call and then response. Call and then response. And then right here, when I start to layer, so it could be good to actually get that bass out of the way more. So I'll get a filter out. I'm going to put the filter on the bass top. Oh, we already have a filter here, so I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to modulate the frequency cutoff. See, now they're just kind of calling and responding more, getting out of each other's way. Anytime an element's coming in, you want to ask the question, what needs to move? Because you need things to get out of each other's way if you want that clarity in your mix. If you're doing a wall of sound, still, trust me, do some subtle automations, and you'll be able to fit even more of a wall of sound style sound in the wall of sound. But we could try a wall of sound section now instead of this heavily layered style. So let's just try that. I'm I'm going to duplicate this whole entire thing. And then, oops, Shift Command duplicate, or Shift Control duplicate for time. Duplicating time. And then let's strip this back. So I can't auto, let's see, at the top base. This old top base, I'm just going to mute it. And then let's just do this pattern. Alright, and then I'm going to just delete these hats first. So let's delete those first. I'm going to delete our noise wash here. The noise sweep. Alright, so also I need to automate the this delay here to get out of the way. I only wanted it to come in here. Yeah, some a little bit more intense with the kick drums. Something like that. And then let's make a wall of sound type bass. There's really no reason for me to be doing this on the group like this. So I'm just going to put this on that top bass we had. And then let's make a new top bass, and I'm going to take the MIDI from our sub, sustained sub. And then I'll use a phase plant to just make some sort of big bass. Yeah, so we're gonna bring that noise back in. Oh, yeah, so we take the noise away here. Pitch bend was stuck. All right, so now that we have this new bass, let's go and I'm gonna get another, or I'm gonna just, yeah, I'm gonna get another Saturn and put it on this. And let's do a kind of a Reese bass, or let's try a Reese bass. So I'm gonna do, this will be our sub, and then we'll duplicate this. And, oh, actually we could take the patch that we're using as our sub, which I will do, and put that on our top bass channel. Ploop. That way it'll match, because I want the sub in this. And then you notice on the top bass group, we're high passing out the sub. So we can do whatever we want, but we need sub in this to get the Saturn that we want. I'm gonna loop this section up, this new section. Wavetable, and let's do some sort of pulse width. So we got squares, and then in here we have the pulse width square. I'm gonna use that. So the whole trick here that I'm trying to do, and I do this in a lot of my music, is I'm using the ability of getting more minimal as a way of escalating while also maintaining the illusion that things are actually getting bigger and more intense. So instead of like just piling more and more and more layers on to add more and more complexity to try to add more and more hype until everything's just a total mess, I'm strategically stripping away layers because I know that'll hit because of contrast. So like when you're building up layers, it's creating this tension, and subconsciously you kind of need a break. So when you then get that break, it's like, yeah, let's go. You know, so that's kind of the idea here with all these different layers, is just kind of stacking them sometimes, but also like going back and forth, you know, always going back and forth, calling and responding. So I'm just going to bounce this out, and then I need to eat food, so I'm pretty much done. Right here, I think I have to do, like, go up a bit more. So I'm going to duplicate the top bass again. And then here I'm just going to change this patch, but I need to make sure to change this, to mute this old one. Because I'm instead of putting MIDI for the individual tracks, I'm just using the sub MIDI. So, but when you do that, you have to like manually mute with gain automation rather than with other stuff.
Instead of a pulse now, I'll do a sawtooth. Alright, so obviously this track doesn't really have any turnarounds yet or any sort of main melodic hook, which I think it would need, or it will need, when it turns into a track, because I'm definitely going to finish this thing. But, you know, just for kicks, let's just send it through the mastering stuff and hear what it sounds like loud. Because that's always a good, test. Always a good test to do, like early on in the process or later on in the process, whenever in the process, you want to like see how it sounds loud. And I like to use this newfangled Elevate because it's multiband and it has transient shaping. So I'm going to turn up the adaptive transient and the adaptive gain and the adaptive speed. So what that means is this plugin's now going to intelligently listen to each one of these filter bands individually and then affect it based on the parameters individually, so that when the compressor compresses or when the limiter limits, it's going to limit in a more transparent way. So let's try just boosting this into that now. I'm going to turn the output channel actually down a bit. Let's check the Twitch levels.
Alright, so I may be clipping, or I may have been clipping that whole time. Alright, so now hearing it loud, I can tell it really could use just a china on the downbeat. And if you're not familiar with chinas, they sound different than crashes. And it's because they hang like weird coins and shit on the crash. Alright, hold on. I need to actually go into my library because searching for these is not being effective. Okay, shout out Kaylin Ellis. Kaylin Ellis has a good china. That's a nice china. It's not too much. That's another good one, the Virtual Riot. Alright, so let's take these and just kind of layer them in here. Okay, and then since a lot of these hats are on, Um, Actually, I did offset in the space plant. You can see there's a little bit of offset here and a little bit of offset here. So that's getting it in the pocket or out of the way of the main transients. But the Addictive Drummer, I think, is on grid. So you can see I offset it a little bit there. So what I'll do is just check the offsets. See, these are offset even more. So just getting them out of the way. But these, I think I'll offset these a bit. And then these, I'll offset those a bit. See how quiet these cymbals can be? I mean, they're all hitting like way quiet. Let's see where they're hitting all in all. Alright, so yeah, they can be pretty quiet, you know, it's all about the gain staging, but like remember, once you master it, those are going to be even louder than you think. So let's bounce it again and listen, or let's just put the master on here and listen with the crashes now. So when this next bass comes in, I was thinking it could be cool to like cut the hats right here so that it's kind of like extra emphasis. It's like It's going to create a feeling of like, whoa, there's something missing, but also give you a chance to really pick up on the bass because that's the only thing that's playing, so you have to listen to it. Even more, like this. Cool. So yeah, with these loud bass sounds, a good way to get them out of the way is just with a little bit of side chain. So here's a cool trick. If you have Soothe, you can use Soothe to side chain. So what I'm going to do is take the side chain from our secondary drums, which is like all our hats and stuff, and then check this out. We can now duck the bass with Soothe via those hats. So those hats are now going to duck the bass out of the way just in the tops. I have to select sidechain and enable this little power button, and now it'll work. I kind of only wanted to sidechain it to like this one, maybe? Or no. Where's the percussive one? Yeah, so let's do it to the addict, to the addictive drummer. So let's take our bass top and then sidechain from addictive drummer. That's a little bit more percussive and less washed out, so we'll get a tighter sidechain with that one. So let's listen to see if this comes through better now. Since the bass gets so loud at this part, I'll actually drag all of this automation up to make these addictive hats louder. if I have like 16th notes, right, make them all a little short, and then I can consolidate this clip, and now I can kind of get a cool pattern. Another thing I like to do to escalate is a new snare. So let's go for new snare. So I'll just duplicate our old snare to a new channel and then change the samples. So it could be cool to have like a lower pitched snare. So let's go snare, and I'm gonna look for like kind of a boom bap snare here. So I have a whole category of snares here in my snares folder called hip hop snares. So let's go through some of these. That has a nice meaty beginning to it. So what if we just cut the front of that? Thing to do with these snares is to just automate like the high pass if you put a high pass on it. So like start out high. Alright, cool. Alright, I'm done. Alright, file save as Sephiroth. Oh my god, I can't believe, what is it, the 5th already? Hey, it's the 5th. Okay. Thanks for watching. Anyone who came through, big up, big up, big up, big up. I love you guys. Yeah. Let me know in the comments. Any questions? Until next time, I'm Sephiroth. Big up, peace. Big up, big up, big up, peace.